Our multimedia reporter, Dwight De Leon, with Prosecution spokesperson Zia Adiong. Dwight?
Yes, John, kasama natin si Congressman Zia Adiong, isa sa mga tagapagsalita ng prosecution. Congressman Zia, we just witnessed the defense team try to undermine the work of the National Bureau of Investigation in investigating the kill threat of the Vice President against President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. What can you say to that? Kasi parang sinasabi nila, sloppy yung investigation, yun yung pinapakita nila, ganun yung tinuturo nila doon sa kanilang line of questioning.
Well, and I understand naman where the defense is coming from because they need to do everything and anything they can to rebut the allegation as contained under the grave threats, but they fail to directly rebut the content of the grave threats and the substantive merits of the case, which is basically that the Vice President was the one who uttered these threats against the President, the First Lady, and the former Speaker. There was no they weren't able to at least rebut or refute the authenticity of the evidence that was used, and that was part of it's not only part, but it's actually the main contention of Mr. Calilong in the previous week, testifying that indeed the evidence or the video that was taken from the 2-hour video was actually Vice President Sara Duterte describing not just throwing or uttering words, grave threats or threats against the president, but describing the agreement by which she and a particular person, a hitman, would carry out her orders, to kill the president, the former speaker, and the first lady. So on that context alone, it wasn't actually really directly addressed the substantive merit of the case. Secondly, what is important, Dwight, is that the mere fact that the DOJ has requested several requirements, I would say, from the DOJ to even initiate the preliminary investigation would only prove that the DOJ is actually, working with, approaching this issue with due diligence and in compliance with the due process. The mere fact that they're saying that, oh, medyo kulang, you have to have an attached affidavit would only prove that the DOJ's approach on this matter is actually very, very meticulous in trying to really comply with all the requirements so that they can start initiating the preliminary investigation, and that is something that we need to focus on. Secondly is that we are testing here the fitness of the Vice President, whether it is really acceptable and tolerable for an official to just simply, say or threaten a fellow public official, in this case, the President of the Republic of the Philippines, and the Vice President being the one that would stand benefit should there be an event that the President will be eliminated. That is also something that is in question here. Would it be morally upright? Would it be morally right, for a sitting Vice President to contact a person to kill the President, and knowing that if that, for example, if that agreement or arrangement would be consummated, then the one that would stand to benefit automatically would be her. So I think that's the main contention here. It's not more on the clerical discrepancies. This is just a matter of, it's a very minimal, if you would ask me. It's a clerical typographical errors or inconsistency that does not invalidate the very case which the House Prosecution Panel would like to present to the impeachment court, which is the fitness of the Vice President to remain in office, considering that what she uttered, is completely a violation of the Constitution and betraying the public trust.
Pero Congressman, kanina rin si Jerry Melotoc ng NBI, yung witness ng prosecution, said that the NBI, or at least his division, was unable to find validated information on the identity of these alleged hitman contracted by the Vice President. Does that impact the case of the prosecution at all?
Well, unang-una, what we're trying to prove here is the utterances of the mere fact that she has described, the way by which agreement was reached, between her and this assassin, this hitman, is already to us a betrayal of public trust. Why? Because even if you go not only just the Constitution, but there is really that ruling in the Supreme Court that there's no such thing as conditional threat, right? Threat is always absolute. You are focused not on the person, saying these threats or uttering these threats. You're actually focused on the impact of the other person that is being threatened. No. Again, we go back to the specific issue here, which is the Vice President making all these threats. Now, the threat, the NBI's intervention in coming up with a decision to hold a preliminary investigation, which is very clear has already been established by Attorney Lotok, is part of their mandate. Their mandate to initiate investigation. When it comes to threats against a sitting president, vice president, the Chief Justice, Speaker of the House, and Senate President, precisely because there's also, especially the President, because it is also an issue of national security, right? So by threatening for the President, you don't actually threaten the personality or the person, but you're also trying to destabilize the government by eliminating or getting rid of the head of government, the commander-in-chief, as well as the head of state. And that is why for investigating agencies such as the NBI, it is part of their mandate also, investigate as to the seriousness, which, by the way, the Vice President has already described, described by way of, saying na hindi to biro, it's no joke, And immediately after that, it was also established that in one of her interviews, I guess, he was asked whether she was just simply joking or was she really serious about these threats, and she said no joke again. It's really a matter of for the NBI to determine the seriousness of the allegation of threat against the president, which to us, having a precedent by which a person was actually arrested during the previous administration simply because of posting on Facebook that she is willing to pay any person who can actually kill the former president. That is indication that the government is taking seriously these threats. If that happened, if that was actually that kind of seriousness was actually been made as a way to arrest or reason to arrest an ordinary person, the more reason for us to set the standard to our government officials, not to mention a second highest official in the land. So we are actually delving here is the issue of fitness. Again, the NBI even explained to us and intimated before the court that there is even that that certainty, the prima facie certainty of conviction. That's why they're also making 3 counts for criminal acts. And another count for inciting to sedition, because not only did the Vice President mention or utter these words, but there were already prior events or engagements with the media that she has intimated that she would cut off the head of the President. So there was already the pattern. This is not an isolated case where the defense was trying to impress upon the public that because she was really mad, she was really, she was really pissed off. That's why she uttered these words. But in fact, at the opposite of that, there's already as an indication, indicated by the NBI that there were already that indication, because in the previous months prior to November 23 Zoom meeting, there were already that statements, saying the Vice President saying that she imagined herself cutting the head of the president. And this was not verbally expressed. It was actually even illustrated by action.
Oh, but quickly lang, Congressman, bago ko ibato kay Jan. Kasi NBI or the line of questioning that the defense pursued was that selective or may bias ang investigation against Vice President Sara, even trying to link the NBI to the office of the President. How do you counter that? Quickly lang, Congressman.
Yes, well, unang-una, there was even a subpoena to the Vice President also to investigate the Oplan Romanov. Now, remember, the Oplan Romanov came about during one of the Maisug rallies, no? And it was, again, asked to the Vice President by a certain person that was attending the Zoom meeting or Zoom conference at that time. So, just to avoid a double standard, na perception by the public that why is the Vice President or why is the threat against the Vice President was not even contemplated by the NBI to investigate, no. But the NBI was very clear. They invited the Vice President in order to share this information to them.
Was enough,
I think so, because in the first place, they were given that access. If you are really that serious of saying that there's really that, conspiracy or the threat against my family, would you not want to take the opportunity, the invitation of the NBI to also share your information? The reason that was given to the NBI is because she cannot leave the office because of some office matters. But she has other, USEX or assistants, to actually do the daily operation, administrative matter of his office. That's the most important thing for her to take upon with the NBI. Because she is really serious about saying na meron Oplan Romanov and they want to wipe out my family. That's the most important. We're talking here of life and death, not only of herself, but even including her family. Why is there no, unwilling to participate in an investigation or an opportunity at least to take the opportunity to also share that intelligence report or report whatever they have to the NBI so that the NBI can initiate.
So you're saying, Kong,
initiate an investigation.
If the threat is serious enough, she would have found time to go to NBI.
That's very common. I mean, that's common sense. If you're really seriously believing that there is really that attempt to wipe up your family, would you not want to go to an investigating agency such as the NBI?
Okay.
So you were also given that. She was actually, requested to to go to the NBI for twice, based on their subpoena that they released.
Okay. Congressman, bato natin kay John. John, do you have questions for Congressman Zia here?
Yes, thank you and good evening, Kong Zia. This is John Neri.
Good evening, John. Yeah, good evening, John.
Thank you for mentioning that there was in fact another video interview of the Vice President where she did not deny that she had said those things on November 23. No? So I think this was the November 26 video. This was already presented by the prosecution last week. But I was wondering why this wasn't brought up today. There was this exchange, actually several times, about denial, specific denial, general denial. Was this a missed opportunity for the prosecution to remind the senator judges that just 3 days after the November 23 video, there was another video showing the Vice President not denying that she had, as you said, she said it was no joke?
Well, I guess it's part of how the flow of the examination of the prosecution. I think that's part of the testimony of Attorney Lotok. In last week, what we actually asked of Mr. Calilong was the authenticity of the video. But now that Attorney Lotok is the one actually doing the investigation, not only the preservation of that video, but in fact, once was the one in charge of investigating the grave threats against the president. That is part of the prosecution's way of examining Attorney Lotok to impress or to inform the public, not only just inform, but to remind also the court that there was indeed that admission by the Vice President that the video that we saw last week presented to the court was actually being reinforced again by a form of admission by the Vice President when she was asked whether she was just joking when she said the threats or whether it was really that serious. So today, we found out, no, based on the way that Attorney Lotok responded to the question of the prosecution, it was not only that the video was established, its authenticity, but the seriousness of the Vice President was also established because she herself admitted that it wasn't said jokingly. It was actually that serious, and therefore it reinforces again the case of the prosecution panel, which is basically asking the people and the court whether this is normal, whether this is acceptable, whether this is tolerable or acceptable for a public official to just simply, utter words that would endanger the life of a sitting president, his wife, and the former speaker. Can this be acceptable to the public, which to us really defines what betrayal of public trust is and culpable violation of the Constitution, because clearly this is, according to our law, this is not something that it should be taken lightly and should not be brushed off simply because of some premise or simply because the person is really angry. So, in the first place, the utterances of these grave threats is already, to us, a betrayal of public trust, because it now questions the fitness of the Vice President, whether she should be allowed to conduct herself, in such a manner that commensurate the standard, the ethical standard that her office demands.
Kong Zia, I know you're very busy, but allow me one more question. No? It seems to me that the defense counsels are laying the predicate to link the filing of the NBI report to the February 5, 2025 impeachment case in the House. Are you concerned that they're getting somewhere with this? May I have your reaction to this, please?
That to me is an overstretch of imagination. No, again, there has nothing to do with the filing of the complaint by the approval of the articles of impeachment by the House of Representatives, with that of the filing of the NBI for a preliminary investigation. What is clear, therefore, is that the entire country, what we saw, what we've heard, that the Vice President said in that video, constitute again a serious act by the government to investigate the criminal intent, and on the part of the House of Representatives, she is an impeachable officer, to demand a explanation by her, by why she actually even said those words, to demand from her accountability that she is, though she may be the second highest official of the land, she is not excused from answering the demand of the Constitution, which is to hold her to account by the actions and the words that she had uttered, endangering the life of the President, the First Lady, and the former Speaker. So just to give you a very short answer, wala pong kinalaman yung pag-file at pag-aproba ng Kongreso, nakaraang Kongreso, sa pag-imbestiga po ng NBI, dahil karapatan po nila at mandato po nilang imbestigahan itong mga pananakot na ito, itong grave threats na ito, dahil unang-una, ang binantaan po ay hindi lang po o tao, ordinaryong Filipino, pero siya po ang head ng government, siya po ang head ng Commander-in-Chief, siya po ang head ng ating Estado. So naturalmente po na kailangan po nilang mag-imbestiga, dahil si mismo po, si Vice President nagsabi, hindi po siya nagbibiro at seryoso po yung kanyang pagbabanta.
Thank you very much, Prosecution Spokesperson, Congressman Zia Adiong. And thank you very much.
Thank you very much, John.
Dwight De Leon.